what we are going to do is, instead of doing an interactive session, we are going to do first a presentation with a demo of the onboarding of Kamailio. And once we do that, which will take not too much time, maybe 10 minutes, then we will ask you to repeat the whole process, so we can go step by step, helping you out and so on, to achieve the same thing that we did in the first part of the session. Okay. So in this video, we are going to show an onboarding tutorial with an open source network function that is Kamailio. My name is David Garcia, and I will be doing this presentation. So first, my colleague Maciek will explain or will introduce you a bit the Kamailio service, and then I will be showing a network service, so the network service, how is it composed, and so on, and basically the network service that OSM will deploy. Then I will show you a list of the links pointing to the source code of where this where the network service is located. And then we will enter to the important stuff, that is the onboarding steps. So how to onboard this Kamailio network service. Then we will do some checks to check that everything has been deployed successfully. And then we will end by executing some day 2 operations. And in the end, we will finalize the session by introducing what we will continue tomorrow.
Okay, so basically the open source project that we will be using today is called Kamailio, and this is an open source SIP server. This is coming from the previous project like OpenSer and SER. And basically what is a SIP server? SIP is a session initiation protocol, and the SIP server, also known as SIP proxy, is something that deals with the management of SIP calls in telco network, and basically takes requests from the user agents, and it can place and terminate calls and collect all the other statistics. So basically Kamailio has all the SIP routing capabilities, and what's pretty good is that you can build IMS and pieces of IMS infrastructure using it, and you can also use it for testing. So basically if you want to build any kind of setups, including SIP protocol, do testing, or actually even use it in production, this is a good way to do that one. And if we can go to the next slide, we'll take a look at what the SIP protocol is. So typically the proxy server is serving as an intermediary, and the caller or a device like IPPBX or any other thing that is using the SIP protocol can send messages and get stuff back. So basically one of the call flows could start from the invite towards the server, and then it will let the caller know that it will try to contact the called party and then do all the things that are needed. So basically initiate the ringing, and this is how the process goes for your standard voice calls over IP. And it's basically, this is the main usage. And also during the tutorial today, you will see not only Kamailio but also SIPP, and this is a tool to test it. And with that tool, you will be able to actually send requests like that and see the response. Okay, David, you can continue.
Okay. So the Kamailio network service that we are going to deploy is or contains basically one containerized network function. This CNF has two workloads: Kamailio, that is the SIP server, and then SIP, that is one SIP client. So if we see the image that we have in the right, what will be deployed is just two workload pods in Kubernetes, one with the zip server and the other one with the zip client. That not today, but in the next session, we will be able to check that Kamailio is actually working fine by executing one action in the client. So where can you find the source code for these descriptors and the operators that will be in charge of deploying Kamailio and zip? So you can find them in these links here, and you can go through the content of those packages and so on, and investigate them a bit. But okay, let's continue with the onboarding steps. So first of all, the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a Vim account. Since this is a purely Kubernetes network service, we don't need an actual Vim for the deployment of this service. So we could just create a Vim account that is that has a type of dummy, which actually doesn't point to anywhere. It's just a dummy Vim account. Then we need to add a K8s cluster. For adding this K8s cluster, we need to put the credentials, the version of the cluster, and information that we see in the screen. An important note for the participants in the Hackfest is that these steps were already made for you, so you don't need to copy and paste these commands, because the actual K8s cluster and Vim accounts are already ready in your deployments. Okay, so the next step is to upload the VNFD and NSD to OSM. So for that, we will execute the following commands. So I have here the OSM packages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Kamailio folder, and here we have these two packages. The one that ends in KNF is the network function, so we will start adding that one with the command nf package create. Okay. This will create a tar.gc file and upload it to OSM. And then we are going to do the same thing, but for the network service. So the command in this case is network service package create and the name of the folder. Okay. Once we do this, we can continue with the next step, that is deploying the network service instance. And we will do this by just executing the command that we see in the screen, which is this one. Okay, which is this one. In the OSMNS create, we set the name of the network service that we want to assign to this instance, and then the name of the network service descriptor, the Vim account name, and that's it. Okay. So let's continue to the next step, that is actually checking that the network service was successfully deployed. So we are going to do that by executing OSM NSList. Okay, it was fast and it's already deployed there. And we can check also the list of network functions that were deployed by executing OSM BNF list command. Okay. So now let's go ahead and show the same thing, but in the UI. Because there are some interesting things that we can do through the UI. So if we go to instances, we can see the same thing that in the OSM client, that is the Kamailio Gates network service instance that we just deployed. And it says that it's ready and so on. So we can go here to this button that is the operational dashboard. What this will show us is the workloads that have been deployed in Kubernetes using charms. And well, you don't know still how to deploy or develop a charm, but we will see that in the next session. So here, basically, we can see two units that are deployed in Gates, Kamailio and Zip. So the server and the client. And this is a very good way of seeing a summary of what has been deployed. And also we can have here handy the IP addresses of the pods in Kubernetes. So let's continue. So now what we're going to do is we're going to execute some day 2 operations. So for executing these day 2 operations, what we are going to do is execute these commands. The first command will stop the Kamailio service by executing an action that is called stop. And here we put the VNF name that is Kamailio and the KDU name that is Kamailio KDU. You can check these names in the VNFD descriptor. And then we will execute the same action, but or the same command, but with the different action that is the start. We should start the service again. So let's execute this. One thing that we can do is in the UI, we can check here the status. And in Kamailio, what we could see before is that the Kamailio service is running. But if we click the refresh button here, what we should see is that what we are actually seeing now is that the Kamailio service is not running anymore. This is because we executed the action. And this charm enters to a blocked state because, well, something must happen for that service to become ready again. So let's go and let's execute the same command, but instead of executing the stop action, we will execute the start action. So we do that, and we can actually execute the live loading or enable the live loading, which will refresh the status of the pods every 5 seconds. And after executing the action, we can see now that the service is running successfully. Okay, so now to finalize, let's clean up the environment by deleting first the network service and then removing the descriptors. But we do OSM ns delete Kamailio gates, that is the name of the network service instance, and we can add a wait flag to wait until the network service is completely removed. So this can take a couple of, well, maybe a minute. A cool thing about the wait command is that it shows the process of the deletion. So it gives you feedback about how the deletion process is going. And we can see also the same status here in the UI. Okay, so now it's deleted. If we do ns list, then we see there are no instances, and let's remove the packages. Online. Okay, I removed the wrong packages. Okay, let's do this as the list, then nsd delete Kamailio network service, and then OSM nsd list to check the list of packages that we have, and we will delete the Kamailio CRF. Okay, so with that we have finished this tutorial, and what's next? So the next session that we will be covering tomorrow is what are day 2 operations, where we will define day 2 operations, which you already have exercised in this tutorial. And we will also explain how to add these day 2 operations to network functions, and we will be basically focused on this work in K8s. So you see that there are some, or that we have deployed Kamailio and zip operators in Kubernetes, and we will be explaining the basics for you to know how to create these operators, which will allow you to do amazing things in K8s, and you can basically implement any action that you want in Kubernetes, which is not really which is not easy without the chance to achieve these things. Okay, so it's finished. So right now, what we can do is we can go back in the presentation, and you can go ahead and follow the same steps as I did. If you haven't already executed them all. You haven't, right? Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and okay. So I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to open these links Okay, in case there are any curiosities about the charms, the operators, and so on, although we will be explaining that more deeply in tomorrow's session. And let's go ahead first and clone this repository, the one in the OSM packages, which I guess you shouldn't clone it because you already have it from the previous Squid session. So let's go to this folder inside the repo. Okay. I put it in the chat. So you go in OSM packages, then go to charm packages, Kamailio. Okay, and do one ls and check that you see these two folders, and let me know in the chat if you can see them. Okay, yes. Perfect. Let's wait a couple of yeses. Okay, so now let's upload the packages. For that, we need to execute this command, which is going, okay, no, it's not going to give me an error because I cleaned the environment, this command and this command. And let me know when you are done. Status building. With which command? Oh, you already deployed it. Okay. Yeah, it takes a couple of seconds to complete that. Okay. Let me know if you uploaded the packages with the commands that I pasted in the chat, please. Okay. Okay. So now, next step is to deploy it. So we do that with this command. And as you can see, the state initially is building, but it will become ready eventually. Okay, instantiating. Perfect. Okay, then let me know when you get to this state, and then we can continue. Okay, perfect. So let's go to the next step. Okay, we checked the NS list. There's no strict need of this, so we don't need to execute this. But let's execute it anyways. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to stop the Kamailio service. So before doing that, what we can do is we can go to the UI and to the operational dashboard. Okay. Let me refresh. Okay, now let's go there and let me know when you are in the UI and you can see the operational dashboard. Yes, exactly. That's it. I'm answering the question of Reza. Yeah, only one BNF that is essentially a CNF because it only has containers. Okay, Prava, yes, I think there are. In fact, here in the OSM packages repo, you can find a lot of packages, some of them which are being used by the Jenkins pipeline in OSM. And we basically are testing daily a lot of packages and a lot of functions of OSM in different branches even. So I don't. So if you are asking about interactions with Mon, I know that the SNMP ones interact with Mon, I think. But I'm not sure if there's actually a test for PLA or a package here for PLA or policy. For policy, I think there is. If someone else in the community has knowledge about that, they could share it from in the chat. Okay, how to get to the operational dashboard? Excellent question. So you should do this. Before explaining it, let me explain another thing. So we deployed Kamailio and zip, and for that we used some operators that are called charms. And Juju is an operator lifecycle manager that is in charge of deploying charms. Okay, having said this, in the community, there's an installation method of OSM that uses charms, and well, it's called a charmed OSM, which basically we built a charm for an operator for each of the OSM modules. So it's just a way to wrap the module of OSM and deploy it in K8s, in Kubernetes, in a way that can be easily, let's say, operate on. So the actions that we executed in Kamailio to stop and start the service are things that can also be done in the charms for OSM itself. So if you do switch OSM, you will switch to the OSM model. Okay, and if you do UU status there, you will see an application for each component of OSM. Okay, we have Grafana, Kafka, Keystone, LCM, MariaDB, all these components. And each charm exposes some or has some configurations. So answering your question, Reza, what we can do is we can execute UU-config of the ngUI, okay, that is the dashboard, the OSM dashboard, and we can check the values and options, settings that this charm has. Okay, there's one that is important, that is the site URL. So we can get the value executing this command. Let me put it in the chat. So this site URL sets the URL that will be used by Ingress to access this service. So basically, if you get that site URL value and you go there, you will be able to log in into the dashboard. Yeah. Okay. Let me know now when you are there in this page. Could you guys please send me your IPs and then I can check what's going on. Okay. You are getting the IP for NVI, but you should be getting the one for ngUI. And yes, you are right, is underscore not dash. Tam, can you give me your IP address? Okay, this is weird. Okay. By any chance, have you deleted the OSM that was provided and you have installed it yourself? Okay, this is really weird. Okay, yeah, I see what happened. You did the bootstrap of a controller, okay? So if you do, you just switch to OSM VCA, which I did for you, and then you can do, you just switch to OSM and that's it. If you do your status now and the other command, it should be good to go. Okay. Well, we are going to continue. If you have any issues or you are blocked, please don't hesitate and just put the question in the chat, and we'll try to help as much as we can. Okay, so we should see something like this. In the tutorial before, when I was presenting, I executed the command in the OSM client. We can do that, and you guys could do that just by executing these commands. Okay. This command, then check the UI, click the refresh button in the dashboard. I'm thinking, and what we are going to do is, I'm going to go ahead and execute this, but then we are going to try and execute the same thing, but from the UI. That way we can see the two ways how actions can be executed. By the way, I put the same command twice. The first one should be stop, and the second one should be start. Okay, so let's go and execute the first command. Okay, and now let's go to the UI and click the refresh button until we see that the Kamailio service is not running. And let me know in the chat if you got to this state. Okay, perfect. Well done. So let's go to the terminal and execute the start command. And we click the refresh button, and there we see that it's running again. And now let me know in the chat again when you got to this state. Yes, Mauricio, yeah. In fact, that's what we are going to try to do after the 3 missing people, I think, finish. Yeah. Okay, I think Tan needs to reply when you finish. And also, okay, and I don't know. Yeah, okay, Olivia. Okay. Perfect. So let's go and let's show these actions, but from the UI. So for that, we'll go to NS instances. And we see here a big blue button that says action. So we click there and we can see here execute primitive. Okay, so we can easily execute a primitive by clicking here. Okay, and we are asked for the primitive type. Okay. For that, we need to select if it's a KDU, VDU, VNF, or NS level primitive. Okay, so I don't want to go too deeply on this, but there are charms of different types at different levels. So you could deploy a charm, an operator, at the KDU level that is a container, which is our case. But then you could execute it, or you could deploy an operator, a charm that is at the VDU level. This means that it is in charge of handling the life cycle of or the operations in a VDU. But the workload in our case is not the VDU, it's a Kubernetes one. So this is the one that we need to click. Then we need to select the VNF profile ID. This is simple. There's only one. Okay, and I will show now where is this coming from. So if we go to the packages, Kamailio here, and we go to the network service. Let me make this bigger. But we can see this YAML. Okay, this is a Sol6 formatted YAML or descriptor, and here in this line here we select or we list the VNF descriptors, so the network function descriptors that this network service will use. In this case, only one, the Kamailio CNF, that is located here, is this one, okay? The Kamailio CNF. So let me go back. Okay, so then we have the deployment flavors. If I'm not wrong, OSM right now only supports the default deployment flavors, but you could effectively have some more flavors of this network service, and because this is a list, and you could add more items to the list. But well, let's focus on this. And here we have the VNF profile. So this is a list of VNFs that this network service will deploy. So a network service can contain one or more VNFs. In our case, it only contains one network function, which ID is Kamailio. Okay, so this Kamailio is the Kamailio that we set here. Okay. Having said that, let's now select the KDU. So the KDU is a Kamailio KDU. And again, let me explain where that is coming from. So for that, we need to go this time to the network function. And here we see KDU. This KDU has a name, which is the ID of the KDU, and Also, KDU stands for Kubernetes Deployment Unit. So this could be a Helm chart or a Juju bundle. In this case, since we want to have operations, we are using a Juju bundle. That, if time allows it, I will show the Juju bundle later. But well, this Kamailio KDU is this Kamailio KDU here. And then we select the primitives. Okay, there are a list of primitives that we support, which are defined here, okay, or exposed here. The actual code for each action is inside the charts, and we'll take a look at that later or tomorrow. Okay, so now we select stop, and yeah, in theory, I think we shouldn't need to enter anything else. Just by executing a stop, it should do the thing, I think. Okay. I don't know if this is a bug. Okay. Okay, I think this is a bug in OSM, which is always good to find because in these events, since we need to show these things, we discover bugs that in the end make OSM more or better after fixing them. So what is happening is that we have a parameter that is application name. This application name is needed in KDU primitives for one reason. What we are deploying is a KDU. The KDU points to a Juju bundle or a Helm chart. But in the end, that bundle or Helm chart has, as you can see, or can have many applications. So this is the bundle, okay? And in this case, we have Kamailio and SIP, the SIP server and the SIP client. So what happens here is that we need a way to tell OSM to which application it should actually point this action. So when we execute a stop, should we go to the Kamailio charm or the SIP charm? So for that, we have this parameter that is application name and with a default value of Kamailio. So when executing it in the client, we didn't specify any parameters, and it got the default value by default. But for some reason, in the UI, it's not working. So let's put here application name. It doesn't show the full name here, which I guess is another bug that we need to create or file. But well, let's do this and put Kamailio here, okay, as a value. Okay, I'm going to wait 20 seconds or so until everyone gets to this point, and please let me know in the chat when you are at this point. Also, Mark, thank you for the explanation in the chat. Okay, everyone, following. Okay, so let's execute. Okay. One thing also that we can do is we can show the history of operations by executing in the action dropdown and going to history of operations. And here we can check that the actions that we executed and so on. So this is a stop, a start, and now a stop. And we can show the information about the primitive that we executed, the parameters, and we can also see the output, okay, which is done by the charm, that the output is service stopped, basically. Okay, and we can go to the dashboard, operational dashboard, and see that well, the same thing happened here. Okay. Another error in the UI is blocking if you select by mistake BDU and your DNFNS is a container-based one. Okay, let me check that one. So you go here and you put this. Okay, no, there's no I don't see any bug. Oh, maybe it's this one, right? Yeah, it's waiting forever. Is that it? So if I do execute DNF or BDU level primitive and Kamailio, okay. You mean this, right, Reza? Or no, sorry, Ravi, sorry. Yeah. This is another bug, so 3 in a row. Perfect. Yeah. I guess it's expecting some BDU level primitives and it's waiting forever for some reason. Yeah, okay. A good ticket, yeah. Okay. So let me know when everything is in this stage with Kamailio stopped. Okay, no, in the history, the operation is failed. Okay, Reza, I will ask you to do the following. Go to Action, History of Operations, and click in the information, in the info icon on the right, and go to the bottom. There you will see a detailed status. Could you copy that to the chat? The service is running, right, for you. So let's do one thing. I'm going to put again the data here so that you can check that you put it correctly. Yeah, let's try with the UI. In the value, you should put this, Reza, Kamailio, like that. I think you might have misspelled the Kamailio application name. Also, just for you to know, if I execute the stop command and the instance was already stopped, if I go to the history of operations, I will see that the action failed. And if I go to the bottom, I will see this. Well, executing KDU stopped. Okay, it's not completed. And in theory, okay, I think we are on fire today because I just found another bug. Okay, if we see the stop action is here. Oh, okay, no, I think there's no bug. No, yes, there is. It should put an error that says failed stopping Kamailio. And if I go to this function, the exception should be Kamailio service is already stopped. For some reason, that is not appearing here in the detail status. So yeah, we should fix that too. Yeah, we are bug hunters today. Okay, Rezas, probably it was because you misspelled the Kamailio's name, and probably is because of that. Okay, so if I go to NS instances dashboard, I see that the Kamailio service is not running. So what we are going to do now is execute the start action. For that, we do the same, but instead of stop, we put a start. Execute, then history of operations, it's done, an operational dashboard, Kamailio service is ready. I am taking note of the of the bugs that we found. I don't remember the one of the bugs. So one of the bugs. So there are 3 bugs in the UI. One is that the one that Refa found, I think. This one, when you put BDU level primitive and Kamailio here, that it gets stuck, right? Mauricio, yeah, answering your question, yes. Okay, yeah, that's another bug. And the other one was that when we do this, we should be able not to put anything here in this parameter. Oh, okay. And then that this is not fully, there's no way of knowing the full name of this. So that's another issue. Okay. Okay, yeah, I took note of all the issues. Okay, let me review the chat. Okay, Mauricio, you were asking if we can define an action to create, delete some zip users on the zip server. Answering that question, yes, you can. We don't expect you to do that or to be able to do that, because you need to actually be or have some expertise in Kamailio, and that might be advanced for some of the participants. If you feel like you can actually do that, that would be awesome. If you can, if you want to try that, yes. What I'm going to show, since we have some time, I'm going to show the descriptors now, and yeah, I'm going to show the descriptors, and if we have time, I'm going to show the charms a bit too. But well, also if you have some questions or some ideas or whatever, please ask them in the chat, and we can, or I will try to answer them. Or any questions until this point? Is everything clear for everyone? Don't be shy. Okay. Okay, so I will show a bit this descriptor, the Kamailio CNF descriptor. So here we have several parts in the VNFD. First, we have things like the ID, the product name. I think that's self-explanatory. Then we have the management connection point. This is more used for BDUs, let's say, for VMs in OpenStack, for example, and things like that. And it's a way of telling which connection point is the management one. Connection points are defined here, okay? And here we see that we define the ID of the external connection point, which is management X, and we assign to it the Kubernetes cluster network that we defined when adding the Kubernetes cluster, I think, and is management net. No, in fact, this one refers to this management network here of the Gates cluster. Then we have this part that I explained before, where we define the list of KDUs that we will deploy. This list of KDUs have the name or the key of this KDU, and then the bundle or help chart. In this case, it's a UU bundle. Let me go here. Okay, and in UU bundles, I have the bundle.yaml. Then also I have these two files that are that finalize or end with a .charm. Let me make this smaller. Okay, no, let's see the full name. Okay, it's basically a .charm file that that this is get using a command that is charmcraft build, and it's an artifact, a zip file basically, with the content of the charm, the actual code for the charm. We will explain that tomorrow. but well, we have these two artifacts that are each one for each, or each of them is for one of the operators. And then we have the bundle. The bundle is a really, well, it's basically is a YAML that allows you to define the list of charms that you want to deploy like at the same time. Let me search one thing. Okay, in this documentation or in this URL, you can find some documentation regarding bundles. Okay, and this okay, bundle reference docs. This will show you some examples of bundles. This is a bundle for machine charms, but in our case, we use bundles only for Kubernetes. So it should have this format. Okay. So if you navigate through this documentation, it's really clean, and it's almost self-explanatory. So you can take a look at that if you are interested. But well, for this session, we are going just to see what we have here, and this should be enough. So the charm or the Kamailio application, this is the name that will have the charm deployed. This is the path to the .charm file that we have above here. And then we can put how many units of this charm we want at deployment time. So yeah, basically we just want one, but imagine we want 2 clients, then we could put here a scale to 2, and then we will automatically have more units for or more pods of that application. Then trust through this. This is a bit advanced, so I am going to skip that. These are options of the charm. So each charm, if you check here, okay, in the Kamailio operator, each charm has some config. Okay, and basically this configuration can be changed. So here we can put the options that we want for that configuration options, let's say. This is like the NGUI that we try to look for the site URL, the URL that is exposed in the ingress for accessing the NGUI. If you remember, we executed a jujuconfig command to get that option or that value in that chart. And then the resources. This for Kubernetes operators, this is obviously useful. And basically here we define or we said that for the Kamailio image, we want to use this one, this Kamailio or this Docker image. This is obviously really useful. Okay, just to point out that that one charm could have one workload image or more workload images. Okay. Okay, let's go back to the descriptor. Someone raised the hand. Prava, have you raised your hand now, or it was from before? I will lower it. If you have any doubts, just let me know. And okay, so we explained the bundle, and now we know where everything is, more or less. So now we can focus in the day 1 to operations. So in this case, in the day 1, day 2 operations, what is expected is a list of objects. And that object, which is this, should have an ID. The ID is the ID of the element that we want to reference. In this case, this ID points to the name of the KDU. Okay. So what we are saying is that these configuration primitives, primitives and actions are the same, or operations. These primitives refer to or point to this KDU. This is something important. Config primitives are day 2 actions, but before in the previous session we showed the squid example. Let me go there just in 1 second. Okay, we had initial config primitives. These are day 1 actions. So and in fact, one of the differences is that in the day 1 action, we should put a value in the parameters, not a default value, because these are automatically executed by OSM. So you should have already the values there that you want to execute. Of course, you can put here like a variable and change it at instantiation time. I am pretty sure that you can do that. But well, in the end, you need to define a value here. And they are executed in a sequence. So you have this sec here that you should put like sequence 1, then or 0, 1, 2, 3, and all the actions will be executed in the order that you define. Okay, so these are day 1, and these are day 2 actions. And day 2 actions can be executed like well, manually, like we did before, that we go and at any time after the deployment, we execute the actions that we want. So those are listed here. Okay, let me go back. Yes, it is. The sequence is for all initial config primitives, and this is the day 1 operations. And well, they are executed in a sequence. The reason is that in many cases you might want to not execute in parallel some actions, and the best way is by just explicitly telling the or saying the order in which the actions you want to be executed. Okay, so in this case, in this package, we don't have day 1 actions, but we have day 2 actions. Okay, there's the question. In Kamailio, we don't have day 1, right? We don't set initial config. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You were faster than writing than me talking. Okay. Okay. So we have 4 day 2 operations. We start, stop. Okay, that these are all pointing to the application Kamailio. Okay, this name here, Kamailio, should be the same as this name here in the applications. Okay. And yeah, so these three actions point to Kamailio, and this action here is the well, in fact, I'm realizing that I'm explaining some stuff that will overlap with tomorrow's presentation, but well, that way you memorize this well. Okay, can we run something like this? Suppose we have three DNFs. We define the sequence and action, like for one sequence action start, two sequence action stop, and three sequence action start. Yes, we can do that, yeah. But I must say that the initial config primitives are executed in a sequence for a particular operator. So imagine we have or a particular object in the descriptor. So in this case, we have Kamailio KDU, and we have an ID here that points to that one. So if we add here initial config primitives, the primitives that we set here will be executed sequentially for that KDU. But imagine we add another KDU, and then we add another section of this for the primitives of that second KDU. We will have two lists of, or we may have two lists of day one actions, one list for the first KDU and another list for the second KDU. Those actions might be executed in parallel, the ones for the first KDU and the second KDU, but OSM will make sure that for one KDU, in this case, the action with sequence 2 doesn't get executed until the previous actions are executed, but for that KDU. I don't know if that's clear enough. Okay, so here in the okay, another question. So we cannot set primitives for both at the same time, like ID, Kamailio, and zip. Just to be brief. I don't know if I'm following. Yeah. Okay. I think I got you. So yes, in this case, no, because those two applications, the Kamailio and zip client, form part of the same KDU. So you cannot execute in parallel two actions for the same object that in this case is a KDU. Okay. I hope that's clear, yeah. And okay, the last option, or the last action is named options, and this will execute a command in the zip client that will try to execute a zip command that is called options against the zip server, or the IP that we set here. Okay, so basically what we are going to do tomorrow is we are going to execute this action, saying here or putting here in the IP field the the IP of the Kamailio server, and we'll check the output of that action, and we'll check that it's actually successful. Okay. Okay. Since you are not disconnecting, so I guess this or you are following, I'm going to very briefly explain how this magic, let's say, is happening. When I say magic, I say that how is the actual or where is the actual code for the action that we want to execute? Where is that located? So let's use the example of a stop. And we'll try to, well, you'll see many code there, but I will try to focus you just in the stop part. So let's go to Kamailio, to the Kamailio charm and the stop action. For that, this is the URL of the source code. Okay, and I will go to this file that is actions.yaml. Okay, this actions.yaml is a really simple YAML that shows like the actions of this charm, and so on. Okay, these are the list of actions for this charm, the Kamailio operator. So we have, in this case, a stop, the action that is a stop, and well, one description, and there are no parameters or so on. Okay, so here we do something really similar as we do in here. So what we do is we are defining that this charm has a action that is a stop, which has no parameters, and the description of the action is this one. Okay, here we are doing exactly the same thing. We are saying that there's a primitive stop of the Kamailio charm. So we are just exposing that the charm already exposed, but we are exposing that to the end user of OSM so that you can actually execute the action. Okay, so the code is not here. Let's see where the code is. In the source charm.py, here we have the Python code for our charm. Okay, the charms have events that we'll see tomorrow, and I will put many links that explain really well how the actions work and how or the events work and so on. So everything will be more than clear. But basically what we do is, for the stop action, for example, what we do is we observe the stop action event. And when that event happens, we go to this function, the onStop action, which is defined here. Okay, let's focus only on that, not to be afraid of the other lines. So we have this. This is the only thing that we want to see right now. So this action will actually call, or it will try to call the stop Kamailio function that will actually stop the Kamailio service. And if this success, it will go to the next line and it will set the result of that action, and it will say like output service stopped. If it fails, then it will raise an exception, and it will put here like failed stopping Kamailio, and then the reason. Okay, this is pretty simple. So now let's go to this function, the stop Kamailio. So the operator framework, that is the framework that we use when developing the charms, allows us to use, or allows us to do some cool stuff. Like, for example, in this case, what we are doing is we are here with this line, self unit get container, we are getting the container, the Kamailio container. Okay, this container, I will explain where it is coming from. In the metadata.yaml, here we have defined one container. The container is called Kamailio, and it has, or it uses one resource, that is the Kamailio image. The resource Kamailio image is defined here, and is a noise OCI image, a Docker image basically, that uses this. Okay, this image. Okay, so let's go back. Let's go back. Okay. So here what we are doing is we are getting an object container that we are getting the Kamailio container here. We can see also the object types and all these functions. We can look them in the operator framework, and they are really well documented. So what we do is this container object exposes a service that is, or a function that is get service. So we check if the container service that is Kamailio, the status, see if it is active, if it is not active, sorry, then we raise an exception saying that the Kamailio service is already stopped. So we cannot stop something that is already stopped. And then if that check is not true, then we go ahead and we do container stop and the Kamailio service. And then we execute this function that what basically does is it checks the status of the container, so that if the status is active, you will see an active status, Kamailio service is running, or if it's not, you will see Kamailio service is not running in block status. This is what we could actually see in the UI. When we stopped the service, we were seeing that the charm was in the blocked status with this message, which in general is very, very useful to show to the end user what's actually happening with the service. Is it running? It's not, and things like that. So we can see that for actually stopping the Kamailio service, we so to implement that action, it was like 10 lines of code. These 5, we removed the comments, 5 lines, and here one to observe the event, and here the actual handler, this also 5 lines. So pretty simple to add an action. In this case, I only showed how to stop and start the service, and this is done by a tool that is called Pebble, that allows you to communicate with the container. This is something that I will explain more deeply tomorrow, and it's really interesting. But the things that we can do with this mechanism is like not only stopping or starting some services, but we can actually execute one-shot commands into the Kubernetes container, which you can imagine is really, really powerful. Imagine you have one MySQL charm and with one action to do a backup, and then you can simply execute a one-shot command and doing a MySQL dump into that container, and you have in a couple of minutes you can implement an action to a Kubernetes container that without charms is actually really complex to automate that or to expose some day-to operations in an easy way to the end users. So it's really awesome what you can do with this. And also another thing that you can do is you can pull files from the container to the charm, and you can push files to the charm to the from the charm to the container. So for example, you can easily change configuration files. In this case, for Kamailio, imagine you can change the configuration files. In fact, I do that in a place. In fact, I think this should be commented out. I don't know why it's not. But here, for example, I push to the container this file with this content, saying the zip domain, which we got that from the config. So it's really, really convenient. And so we can actually push files to the container, change the configuration files, restart the services when needed. And well, there are pretty basic stuff, but in the end, really useful and powerful. And those are the main pillars that with which you can do almost anything. So I don't know if that was more or less clear, but I think I'm going to stop for today. And if you have any questions, I will be glad to answer them. And if not, I think we can take a rest, and tomorrow we continue again.